Welcome, Intro to Studio Art students, for your wire portrait lesson. This is a little technical demo I'm going to give you on your materials being used. These are scissors. You can use these if you don't have your needle nose pliers or your snips. This is your 18 gauge wire and your 24 gauge wire. You may have gotten 22 gauge wire, that's fine. The higher the number on the gauge, the thinner the wire. This is steel wire, it doesn't rust, and it's pretty easy to bend. The higher the gauge, the harder it is to bend. So when you cut wire, snips are really the best for cutting. Depending on how sharp they are, they will cut your wire. So will needle nose. So if all you have are the needle nose, you can put your wire in here, the cutting area down below at the base of the pliers, not up here, down here. And you can cut. Actually, that cut better than the snips. And then if you only have scissors, you can cut the wire with the scissors. Basically, you have to put the wire in the scissors like this, bend the wire, press, and it will cut. I don't recommend scissors, but if that's all you have, that will work. The scissors cut the 24 gauge very easily. So a couple of things I want to show you is how to bind your wire. This is the #1 skill that you need to know. I've got a very tightly bound circle here, and I also have one that is not tightly bound. This one is messy and my wire moves, and as I get going with my project, if I were to do this, that is frustrating. It also is so messy that it becomes part of your project, and it's just not a very good look. This one you can see is very tight. It's not messy, so you don't see it as easily. And my wire is tightly bound together, and so it's not going to move. So I'm going to show you how to do this bind. The first thing is to take your 18 gauge wire and to cut a piece with your snips or your needle nose. And you're going to bend this into a sphere. Now remember, wire is a lot like clay. It's going to want to do what it wants to do, and it's your job to control it. So the complaints I get from students usually are, it's hard on your hands. And you're right, it is. Your hands need to gain strength in order to be able to manipulate the wire. You may cut your hand a little bit, so just put a Band-Aid on. You can go ahead and start with a Band-Aid on your fingertips if that is easier. So you're going to take your 18 gauge wire and you're going to get it into a circle shape. Then you're going to pinch those two ends together and you're going to wrap your 24 gauge around it. And basically what you're doing is you're not tying a knot, but you're tightly pulling the 24 gauge around that 18 gauge. And you just continue working that. You don't have to go too far. And then do the other side, making sure that you're pulling the 24 gauge tight. So after that, it's still not very close, and so you can take your needle nose pliers and squeeze that wire together. You can continue wrapping until you feel like you've got a nice tight bind. One more. And then you can take your snips or your pliers or your scissors and cut off those ends. Those ends will be sharp, and so what I like to do is press them down. And now I have a nice tight bind.